Hello, everyone, and welcome to the newest episode of the Question Everything podcast with your host, Cameron Hogan. Today's guest is Dr. Miriam Zylberglait. Dr. Miriam Zylberglait is a triple board certified academic physician and a national well-being advocate. Miriam has written the book, The 3G Cycle of Life, The Secrets of Achieving Joy, Meaning, and Well-being. I believe this book is the perfect mixture of analytical data showing the effects of burnout and powerful personal stories that give us a roadmap on how to regain purpose and enjoy all that life has to offer. Miriam, thank you for joining us in the Questioning Everything podcast. So, Miriam, in the book, it became obvious that you took a pretty much well-needed extended break during the pandemic, and it really allowed you to kind of step back and analyze the direction your life was headed at that point. I really want to know, what was going through your mind at the time that made you kind of rethink everything that you're currently doing?
It's a very interesting question because the break was not a break that I decided to have. It was a break that was forced by COVID. We stopped going to the hospital or to the clinic, and we started helping people from our homes. So I had, I slowed down a little in my work, but at the same time I had more emotionally involvement with my kids and with my community. And that transition from living, doing to just being allowed me to think about what was my priority in life and how to manage myself during times that were so awkward and so unexpected.
Yeah, Miriam, I completely agree. It seems as if COVID really seemed as, although a pretty terrible thing for the entire world, a lot of people use it as a kind of catalyst to change a lot of things that were currently going on in their life. It seemed as if it was our first ever real reset that we had to really take a step back. And I know a lot of people that was, very thankful and were able to reanalyze the current situation, including myself, and see what I liked what I was doing in my life and what I didn't like what I was doing in my life, and make those changes. So I know that's a lot where the inspiration for the book came was from that time you had alone and the time you had with your family to understand burnout and understand the other topics that are discussed in the book. One other thing I want to mention about the book is it was very unique reading it because there was no particular order when it came to each chapter. Usually, of course, chronological order, 1 through however many chapters. Yours was interesting that you made very clear in the introduction where the reader can jump from whichever section they felt would suit their needs in that moment. What made you decide to organize the book in that way?
I believe that these books target those that are living stressful lives and that are trying to heal. So adding more stress, meaning you have to finish the book, and if you don't finish the book, you may be failing or you didn't achieve your goal, was adding more and more stress. My idea is to reduce the stress. So I thought that life is different for all of us, and we are going through different situations, even during the same time. COVID was different for each of us. So there is no need to go through life in the same sequence, and there's no need to go through this book in the same sequence. You may be going through grief, and grief is the thing that you need to learn today and what you need to understand, while for me maybe fear or happiness. So connecting the dots of the book in different ways where the book still makes sense and making you feel like, okay, today you finished that chapter, or this week you finished that chapter, and you can close that book without any guilt. So in 3 months, you want to read about something extra, or you want to, investigate or or understand something different, that book is waiting for you. It's ready for you when you are ready, without any pressure, without any guilt, without any stress involved, because this book has to be your friend, not your enemy.
And Dr. Z, the amount of times that I've purchased books where I'd read the first 10 pages and then put it down and say, you know what, and tomorrow I'm going to read another 10 pages, or I'm going to finish that chapter, whatever it may be, and then go on to never touch that book again, has happened so many times that I'm probably one of the most loyal members at every Barnes & Noble, every Amazon book, whatever it may be. It's kind of sad in that way. So I think one of the main things for me, and I know this resembles a lot of other people, is that it is pretty daunting. You've heard that these books are incredible and that they're a must-read, but to actually sit down in today's day and age and read 300 pages, whatever it may be, is pretty difficult. So when I was reading your book, I really liked it because it turned into more of a fun thing. Oh yeah, that sounds like a fun chapter name. Oh yeah, I can sit down and read that for the next 20 minutes or so, and that would be fun with me. And then I can close the book being okay with where I left off and happy with the information I learned. So I think what you're doing is something that a lot more authors should embrace. I think a lot of books already are kind of like that, where you can pick up chapter to chapter. It's not like one long novel. But I really like that you start the book off intending it to be that way. So that was pretty incredible. One thing that one thing that I read in the book, and this was very early on, was your personal experience about the medical profession. And I'm going to read this quote to you. You mentioned that you were told millions of times, or what felt like millions of times in medical school, you must save lives. You can never stop. You are never tired or sick. You don't make mistakes. You don't cry. You are obligated to become that person. And then while you transformed into that role, you felt as if the real you disappeared. So you created this kind of avatar that allowed you to have that type of lifestyle they told you needed, but you felt as if the person you used to know, the person you loved, evaporated or was no longer there. And you also said late in the book that this is kind of like a casualty of the culture.
Yes.
My question to you, I come from a background in my family where many of them are part of the medical profession, and there seems to be this kind of like pride that's shared amongst a lot of medical professionals, of course the highest level, the doctors, the surgeons, whatever it may be, that when they talk about the residency, especially the earlier years, about the long and grueling hours that they're working. There seems to be like a pride in that, and I never really understood that. Why do you think that's in place?
Because you don't know better. I didn't know better. Everybody that surrounded me during medical school and then residency were in the same situation that I was. Because of the type of life that you start living when you go to your medical career, you isolate from everybody else that is outside medical school or outside residency. You don't have the time. The energies, and at some point you don't have the interest. You are living this life full of adrenaline when you see these big accidents and these open heart surgeries and these super cool procedures, and anything below that is not interested. And that's something that you start believing that is true. Your friends start getting married and having kids and having, their homes, and you are still this adrenaline junkie, sleeping only 2 hours here, 1 hour there, and feeling so proud of that. It's like, as you're saying, it's like getting a medal. Every time that you miss a wedding or you miss the birthday party of a family member, or that you don't sleep and you don't eat, it's like, yay! I got to that level. I am, I am a superhero now. I look like a doctor. I will be successful. What you don't know is that you are creating a fake reality. This is something that is not sustainable in a good way. You will have to sacrifice many things, and at the beginning it's just the birthday party and maybe an important family meeting, but with time will be time with your kids, will be time for yourself, appointments in the doctor, being there with someone that you love dies, sleeping enough to be able to be a good doctor, right? Because with time, and when you are 20, maybe you can live with that energy. But when you are 30, 40, 50, and you have kids and you have family, you cannot keep on this. And suddenly you are burned out, and you discover that you cannot deliver what you wanted to deliver, that was good care and really save life and help others. You empty what I say in the book is you empty your own jar, your me jar, and when your me jar is empty, there's nothing that you can give to others. Where all that love and all that care will come from if you don't have it inside of you.
Yeah, when I was younger, one profession, that I see very closely tied to the same culture as the medical profession is actually finance and economics. That was something that I have a background in. And when I think of New York and I think of Wall Street, it's very much the same mentality of I'm going to be in at 5 a.m. and I'm not leaving till midnight, and I'm just going to work, because that will set me ahead of everyone else around me and get me closer to whatever goal it is. It might be a monetary goal or just status in the company. Of course, it's different for medical professionals because it's more of just, I'm saving more lives and doing this, and that. But one thing I've realized after personally trying to live that lifestyle is that when you focus so much on one aspect of your life, in my personal perspective, that was finances, that was career, pretty much everything else suffers. And it's not because you want them to suffer, it's just because there's only so many hours in a day and so much energy that you have. And I find it really sad to see this happening in medicine, because when a finance person makes a mistake, the worst thing that can kind of happen is people lose money. And that can be a terrible thing, especially with other people's money. But it's a complete different story when you're talking about people who work in the medical profession, because when they make a mistake, people die. And that's their lives they're playing with. And when doctors are the ones trying to teach us about health and teach us about a lifestyle that we should adopt for the betterment of ourselves and people around us, it's hard to take advice from a doctor who's obviously working 16 hours a day. It's just eating the cafeteria food they get in the hospital or from a vending machine on their way out, 2 hours of sleep like you're talking about. It's very hard for that to happen. And I think that's a very, I hate to say it, but just like toxic culture that currently exists, not only amongst doctors, but, a lot of nurses. I have friends who are nurses, the same thing. And I just can't imagine living a healthy lifestyle and being an example for your patients if you're in that type of zone for years. I just can't imagine the rest of your life also being in order. Were you able to find a way?
No. I was saying, we used to justify that as a joke, saying that patients, that the doctors are the worst patients, right? Or nurses are the worst patients. And that was a joke. It's like, I am a doctor. I mean, I don't eat well. I don't sleep. And it was fun to say it. It's not fun anymore, not for me at least.
Yeah, it's like watching your doctor smoke cigarettes and eat donuts. It's like, what's going on here? I remember I had that as a child, and I took a stern look at my parents, even at a young age. I'm like, what's what's going on here? That was something that's always very odd to me. I was very fortunate. My parents were both in kind of alternative medicine. One's a chiropractor, and then one I wouldn't really call it alternative medicine, but one was a dentist. So it's a little bit more of, a 9 to 5 in that way. So I was fortunate where I was still able to spend a lot of time with them, and they didn't, absolutely lose their minds. And so that's a good thing. What do you think really caused that culture to begin with in the first place? Is it just the adrenaline rush that they become addicted to? Because I can't imagine us starting from scratch and choosing to go back to the way it is now.
You know what? I really, that's a very good question, because I really don't know how this started. I know how this got worse, because when I trained in Peru, I didn't have restrictions in hours. Now we are kind of saying you cannot work more than these hours if you are a resident, or you cannot see more than this amount of patients if you are in certain hospitals. Before, that didn't exist. But at the same time, doctors, we had autonomy, and we were able to spend the time that we thought was appropriate with each patient, prescribe what we thought that was the best medication or the best treatment or the best test, without any restrictions or someone judging us or telling us if it is too pricey or not. Right now, we are not only working long hours, but we have a lot of pressure that comes from a system that is not managed by physicians or nurses, obviously, and that is more focused on the financial aspect of medicine than in the quality of life of patients, sadly. And I feel like before we were able, it was not healthy to sleep 2 hours or eat cafeteria food or not exercise. I will never say that that was healthy. But it was not as toxic as it is right now, where we feel like slaves of a system. We are not proud of what we do because we don't have our own decisions. We are not going through medicine following our own values. And we are forced to satisfy a system that cares about money, production. We are evaluated based on the number of patients, know how healthy they are or how satisfied they are with our encounter, and things like that. So why we became these hamsters running, in the wheel in medicine? Not sure. Maybe because that was our own passion. Maybe it's us that we sent ourselves to that type of career, thinking that altruism, right, which we say medicine, to be in medicine, you need to be altruistic. Maybe we confuse altruism with we don't take care of ourselves. And really it's a mistake, because even to be altruistic, you need to take care of yourself. How you will help others if you are not okay? But what happened during the last decade has been kind of the last drop to really put all of us in the danger of being burnout and being unhappy with our careers and feeling not proud of what we do every day. And that's painful.
Dr. Z, when I think of a young Dr. Z, right, someone who is filled with adrenaline but didn't have the opportunity to focus on other important things in their life, their health, their family, whatever else it may be. Now you have the information that you do and have had the wisdom and experiences that you've been through, and you also have a copy of your book. What would you say to your younger self who was in the hustle and bustle and going through it about their current workload and about burnout? What advice would you give them?
I will say, and I will say this not only to doctors, but I will say to anyone in your generation or younger, to my kids even in the future, your career is not who you are, it's what you do. You are Miriam or Cameron or whatever it's your name, and that's the person that you are, and that's the person that will be with you the rest of your life. The white coat is something that I use as to dress during my times of work, and should not occupy my 100%, because tomorrow I can change my career, but I have to live with myself, and I need to be able to see myself in the mirror and ask myself if I am proud of who I am and what I am doing, and I need to answer myself, yes, I am proud. I am proud to be a good mom. I am proud to be a good wife. I am proud to be the good daughter that my parents deserve, and the good friend that my friends deserve. And I have to be also proud of be myself, my best friend, the person that takes care of me, the person that is making sure that I am fulfilling my goals and going through life, with my own values and aligned to my own values and pursuing my meaning and my purpose. And if that is erased by the title that you get, the certificates that you have in your walls, you will regret. And you cannot go back on time, sadly.
I definitely agree with that. I think the big problem that keeps, the person on Wall Street working the job, or the doctor working crazy hours despite them genuinely being unhappy and not taking care of themselves, is the fact that they make what they do part of their identity. If you only see something as your profession or what you're currently working on or as, you're more detached from whatever job that may be, and so that you're not defined by being a doctor, you're not defined by being a stockbroker or a lawyer or whatever else it may be. It seems, especially, me now living outside of America, I've had a lot of different experience, but especially in America, I've noticed that who we are is defined by what we do for a living. And
what do
there
you
are definitely
have
some...
Also?
Exactly. Yeah.
But it's okay. The color of your car and how expensive is the role, the watch that you use, right? And those things, they don't necessarily reflect your well-being or your values or how amazing you are as a human being.
Definitely, 100%. And don't get me wrong, I'm a big car guy. I love cars. I would love to have a supercar one day. I love nice homes. I've also realized, especially now living on a small island in Indonesia, the other side of the world, where I drive a moped around all day and, it flip-flops 24/7,
cool.
that stuff, thank you, that stuff definitely isn't needed. And sometimes it takes removing yourself from that situation to reanalyze what's really important. Because when you're in that world, when you're in the medical profession, when you get out of medical school and all your friends are in the same boat, it's very hard to have a different perspective or difference in opinion. So it makes sense why they're in that place, but I think the advice you just gave along with your book is a great way for people to understand that what they do is not who they are, and that there are other important things to life. So I think that's just great. Dr. Z, one thing that I learned, there's actually a whole chapter labeled The Monster, which is very intriguing to me. Can you tell the audience what the monster is in all of our lives?
The monster is how I call chronic stress and therefore burnout. We have been labeling stress in general as something negative, and I am truly a fan of stress. I love stress, and I believe that stress is super positive if we use it correctly, and it's the mechanism that we develop since, day one as humans to protect ourselves from situations of danger. So if a lion is in front of us, we will have a mechanism in our body that will activate our stress and will allow us to take the decision of run, which is very good in front of a lion. Right now, our mechanism continues active, and we see stress every day in different situations. And running, maybe not from a lion, but from situations that are toxic, is a good decision. And knowing that you cannot jump into the pool if you don't know how to swim, and having this sensation of fear is something good. But after certain time of living under stress, and depending of the reason of stress, instead of being something positive for us and something that protects us, it starts being a problem. And this is translated in our body, and I know I'm talking now a little like a doctor, but I will try to make it as simple as possible. We start to having changes in our body that will become diseases. So we see that chronic stress makes people to be on higher risk of having cardiac problems, meaning cardiac infarcts, or having strokes, which means that you can have problems in your brain with bleeding inside of your brain, or obstructions of your arteries, so parts of your brain may die and you will not be able to function. And this may also increase your risk of cancer and many other diseases in your body. And there are also the mental health conditions that will be increased, so you will have people that will have more risk of having depression or anxiety, insomnia, and all of those may take you even to the point where you will not feel like it's okay to be alive, and you may consider suicide, dying by suicide, that I feel like is the end of the road for all of us. And in between all that chronic stress, there is a condition that we call now burnout, and there's a lot of issues about why we call it like that, and in medicine we don't like to call it like that. We call it moral injury, and I will explain soon why. But burnout identified those that are in chronic stress, but now are also showing symptoms that are unable to perform at work or at home or in the type of life that they normally used to have, that they are not motivated, that they don't have this excitement for doing things, and that they feel always fatigued and tired. And when you put all these things together, you have someone that is burnout. And burnout has been associated not only to mental health conditions as the ones that I already mentioned, but also with cardiac problems and neurological problems, and in medicine, and I'm sure in many other careers, with errors. So those individuals that are burnout will be less efficient at work, and they will have more errors. Why I call it the monster? Because we thought initially that this was happening only with doctors or nurses. And what I discovered with my research is that this is really now another pandemic. That when you see the statistics around the US, and in many cases this is replicated in other parts of the world, you will see, for example, that 65% of physicians, even in some statistics, 70% of physicians suffer from burnout. That means that when you go to a doctor in an emergency, you have 70% risk of having a doctor that is not motivated, that is tired, and is not able to perform in his or her 100% medicine. So you could be in the hands of someone that is not ready to treat you, and therefore you could be a victim of medical errors. And if you multiply this by all the nurses and doctors and healthcare workers, right? And if you think about pilots driving airplanes and taxi drivers taking you to the airport, and those individuals are burnout. So we are living in a world that is dangerous, and we are living with the monster, and we are suffering the monster because the consequences are malignant in many levels.
Yeah, it's very odd. I've noticed that out to the far amount of drug use, of course there's a lot of reasons for drug use, but nowadays with caffeine, with alcohol, with sleeping pills, with anxiety medication, whatever it may be, it's all pretty much correlated with stress. they're taking it because they're stressed, and it's causing lack of sleep, which they now need the coffee in the morning, and now they can't sleep at night, so they need to take sleeping pills. It's just like this endless cycle where we become more dependent on these stimulants and on these toxins that are slowly deteriorating the quality of our life. So I think the monster is very real and alive in a lot of people.
Yes,
And Dr. Z, one thing, definitely, yeah. One thing I want to bring up with you, I have had a pretty unique experience to the past 8 months moving across the world. And I've been very fortunate where I've been able to kind of really change my perspective when it's come to stress. I would never really consider myself someone who was ever really stressed out, especially not to the levels of what a lot of doctors may be in nowadays. But I've noticed that I believe what keeps a person young, what keeps a person living longest, isn't necessarily their diet and exercise. Of course, that's the number one factor and something I'm a big promoter of. But it seems as if the people I know personally in my own life and just hearing stories, it seems as if stress is the number one determining factor, in my opinion, when it comes to how long we live. You know, I've seen people who smoke a pack of cigarettes a day live to 98, and the person who eats pristine, the green juice every morning and gets a proper amount of sleep, who only lives to 72. And it's like, if health and fitness were the only two factors there, then that shouldn't happen, right? But I've noticed that stress is really huge. So I'm out here in Bali, which, a very peaceful place. A lot of people like to think, yes, a lot of people definitely gets interesting perspective, but many others. But if you want it to be, it can be a place with very little stress, and that's something I experienced. But when I had absolutely, I would say, minimal, if not no stress in my life, I was miserable. I hated my life here. And that's something to say when you're staring at a beach and sipping a coconut. That's not a popular point of view to have, having no stress and not liking it. But that's exactly how I felt. And I was reminiscing on the times where I was back in college, have to worry about or focus on assignments and going to this event, meeting this girl, doing this thing, blah, 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 whatever it may be. I missed that action and those things that I can think of and think towards. So I've been very fortunate to kind of go on this introversion or this trip in my own brain to better understand my relationship with stress. And at this moment, I really feel as if positive stress and stress about the things that are moving your life towards is needed and is actually good to some extent, there's really, I don't know the exact medical terms, you may know this a lot better than I, but there's two types of stress. And it seems as if...
stress. It's called stress. It's good stress. It's normal stress. It's something that we need to function, of course. What you're feeling is correct and it's normal. Imagine you living your life watching that coconut for for the rest of, the year. You will not be able to produce anything. And I'm not talking about money or, or product, but you will be being, which is great for a while, but we need to be part of the world in an active way. And actually there is a curve that maybe you were able to see in the book that shows the relationship with performance and stress, and is this Gauss curve where when you have zero stress or almost no stress, you are really not productive. Your creativity is almost zero. you are being, and it's healthy and it's good for short time, but that's nothing that will keep you alive for the rest of your life, because you are almost, I don't want to say this, but you are almost like a flower there, right? You are part of the scenario, but you are not actively living. And you have this good stress, out stress, where you have enough stress to function in a healthy way. You have enough adrenaline to push yourself and to be creative and to interact with others and to dance in a party and, run in the mornings. And then you can go to this other extreme where the monster lives, sadly, where the amount of stress that you have is so toxic that instead of you being able to be creative or active, you get so tired, so damaged that you cannot think anymore, you cannot do something, you cannot create anything, and finally you may even die. So what you are saying is cool, right? Being in Bali, I can imagine that has to be interesting to have these amazing moments of full relaxation, but you need to eat and produce money and meet with people and exercise, and that needs from you a little of this good stress that is part of being alive.
Definitely. You discussed quite a bit there, the positives a certain stress can have in your life, and then also the negatives. Someone who has experience and has now written a book about this topic, how do you recommend someone goes upon finding the right balance for them?
It's a very, very good question, because my level will not necessarily be your level. It will depend. And my level today may not be the same level or threshold that I had 2 years before, or I will have 10 years later. So it's something that is really based on where we are in our life and our own characteristics. But I feel like at the moment that you start being uncomfortable, when your gut feeling tells you, oh, this is not correct, when your body is telling you, I am getting tired, and instead of being creative or productive, I am really going in the opposite way, I am compromising my well-being, or I am starting to get complaints from my family or my friends that I am not present enough. So you need to start hearing, yourself and those surrounding you, and see this as red flags. And if you have a short time, it's like, I have to present this, homework or this project in 3 days, and these 3 days I will go beyond my own limits because this is important. That is one thing. We have been there, all of us, and we will be there again for sure. The question is this 3 days, or this is weeks after weeks, and we change from one excuse to another, and suddenly we are swallowed by this monster that keep us busy even for no reason. And that's when we have to say no, and be sure that we set boundaries, clear boundaries about what is healthy for us, what makes us happy, what is done because it's aligned with what we want, with our goals, with our values. And when we cross that line and we are doing this without knowing even why. How many times you feel like you are running and running and running, and you started running because you wanted A. And suddenly you have A, but you keep running, and you don't care about B, and you don't know if you want C, but you keep running because you are used to run, and everybody next to you is running too. So we need to know what are our goals, what are our values, and work aligned to that. If not, we get lost. And I have been there. I have been lost more than once. And it's very interesting because you don't know that you are lost until something bad happens that opens your eyes. In my case, COVID. or your family starts telling you, where are you, mommy, or do you love the phone more than me, and you realize that you are doing something wrong, that you are very far away from who you really are.
I think to have the ability, I see so many people nowadays, especially once you mentioned the phone, that really struck a chord with me. I know so many people, we all do, most people my generation.
Me too.
that that although they know that they value their family and their friends and communication relationships and their health and their well-being over their phone or over their vape pen or over whatever it may be, the addiction is so consuming that you're not even really given the time of day to think about consciously that you're choosing this one thing over the other. So it seemed as if for anyone to really be in the state of mind where they can truly analyze their current situation, whether they're working 80, 100 hours a week in the residency at the hospital or working for a law firm, same hours, doing the same thing, neglecting their fiance, their kid, whatever it may be. It takes this level of consciousness to really understand and take a step back. And I think that's something that you did a great job of touching on in the book also, to put yourself in the right mind to be able to understand when stress is good, when stress is bad, and just overall when you need to take care of yourself before you can take care of others. And that's something that I think everyone needs to hear, especially doctors, but everyone needs to hear. So I think that's great advice there. Now, Dr. Z, the one question that I ask all my guests on my podcast, the very last question is, what is the most important thing you feel the world needs to hear right now?
I believe that what we need to hear, all of us, because I include myself, and I am still in the process of learning and growing like everybody else, is that we are not alone. And we are not alone suffering, we are not alone growing, we are not alone learning. And we need to open our hearts and our minds to others and allow others to be with us. We cannot live this complex life trusting that we will be able to do it ourselves. I thought that for so long. And there is not shame on being vulnerable. There is no shame on going through difficult times. There is not shame if someone has a mental disease or depression, anxiety, or even burnout, or if someone feels lost during transitions or in this complicated world. We find a strength in the ability of recognizing our gaps and being able to say this loud and asking for help and starting the process of growing and healing and doing better. So don't feel ashamed of asking for help. Don't be ashamed of not being perfect. We are not supposed to be perfect. That's not real. And don't be afraid of having fear. Ask for help. Ask for others to support you. And love yourself and be kind with yourself, because you will be surprised of the amount of people that is around you living the same things that you are living or willing to help you to get better. We should not be seeing as many burnout, suicide, depression, anxiety, loneliness as we are seeing today in our countries. There is no reason. We as humanity, we can do much better for ourselves, for our loved ones, and for the new generations.
I really do love that. I really feel as if if we can all better understand what we are going through, our struggles or challenges, what we're facing internally, externally, that is truly the only way that we can change. Because if one person is open about their struggles in medical school and being overworked and not being able to see their family, whatever it may be, that's something. But because that person raised their hand and talked about it, everyone else in the room can relate. And then once everyone else in the room can relate, then you can start to ask the questions of, why are we doing this? Why are we choosing to live this way if we're all going through the same struggles and challenges? There must be a seismic shift to make happen. And I believe that's true when it comes to being overworked. I believe that's true to what we eat. I believe that's true how we run countries, how we communicate in general. So that's a big part. It's truly just asking the questions. But why are we doing these things? And that's exactly why the podcast name is Question Everything. So this is exactly why I wanted to have you on the podcast, Dr. Z. Someone to be able to write a book like this and have the career you've had. It takes someone who is able to ask the hard questions about life. And I know the audience is really going to appreciate it. And I know I really appreciate you having it on. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Dr. Z. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for giving the opportunity. I admire what you are doing. I love the name of the podcast because I feel like that's the first step to create change, to ask questions. And I believe that you are opening the hearts and the minds of people, and that's so valuable. And thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with your audience and to support my dream of making this world a better place.
And thank you all, the rest of the audience, for tuning in today. We will see you next week.